This is a news flash.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of 6 News as we continue our coverage on Sydney's COVID-19 outbreak. We begin with breaking news, and new rules are set to come into place across New South Wales, with masks to be made mandatory in certain venues across Greater Sydney. But many people have labelled the decision from Gladys Berejiklian too little too late as cases continue to rise. Holly Shields has more.
The latest COVID-19 development in New South Wales has seen 7 new cases emerge in a Barala cluster, which has become a new hotspot. 4 of the 7 are reportedly from the same household and linked to known cases, with the exception of 1, which is currently under investigation. The Barala cluster marks the 4th of COVID clusters to appear and is now causing major concern from experts. This comes following the recent outbreak on Sydney's northern beaches, which prompted special restrictions on gatherings that were enforced over the holiday period, but have now been relaxed in the southern zone of the area. Despite this easing of restrictions, new measures to combat the spread of the virus have been introduced for the Greater Sydney region. Masks are now compulsory on public transport, in shopping centres, hair salons, beauty salons, hospitality establishments, and certain outdoor areas. A 1-day grace period has been granted to Sydney residents to ease in the new measures and likely allow them to stock up on masks. However, from Monday the 4th of January onwards, those not abiding by the new regulations can expect a hefty fine of $200, with the exception of children under 12 and those with existing medical conditions, both of whom are exempt from the mandatory face covering policy. In addition to this, restrictions on indoor gatherings have been tightened, with gym classes set to be reduced from a maximum of 50 participants to 30, and nightclubs disallowed from entry. Places of worship, weddings, and funerals have been capped to a maximum of 100 people, while outdoor performances and controlled outdoor events have been set to be reduced from 1,000 to 500 and from 5,000 to 2,000 respectively. It's hoped that these new measures will slow the spread of the virus and prevent further clusters from emerging in New South Wales. Provided residents abide by the regulations, only time will tell whether they prove successful.
New South Wales health authorities are nervously waiting to see whether New Year's Eve celebrations will cause numbers to rise. But as Connorell 4K reports, festivities varied across the globe as we farewell 2020, but not the virus.
Partying like it's 2019. New Zealand, Perth and the reportedly virus-free Wuhan enjoying New Year's celebrations reminiscent of years past. There were no large crowds, but the ball drop remained in New York City's Times Square, this year eerily empty. Back home, police are calling it
the quietest New Year's Eve celebrations for decades.
In Sydney, harbourside locations were fenced off and a permit was required if you were entering the CBD. But across the country, restrictions were also ignored. This video taken in Melbourne, where only 50 people are allowed on the dance floor. Any cases contracted at New Year's festivities will appear within a few days' time. The number of visitors allowed into a household in Greater Sydney has been capped at 5, but authorities fear that rule was flouted. It's why they're concerned New Year's Eve house parties, not mass public gatherings, would be the most likely source of a super spreader event. There are fears the new year could heighten complacency, prompting reminders from state and federal leaders.
The virus hasn't gone anywhere. We still need to be on alert. We still have to follow those COVID-safe behaviours.
2020 may be long gone, but the virus isn't. Connorell 4K, 6 News.
A number of restaurants in the Melbourne CBD are among the latest COVID-19 exposure sites listed by health officials as they battle to contain a cluster directly linked to the New South Wales outbreak. Authorities say they're still following several leads to identify the index case which brought the virus from interstate, but testing has revealed a direct link to the outbreak that began on Sydney's northern beaches. Meanwhile, hundreds of people have made a mad dash to the New South Wales-Victoria border, with lines stretching for kilometres after a hard border was put in place. Any Victorians who arrive at the border will either be turned away or forced into 14 days of mandatory quarantine. And traffic queues have also been seen in the ACT as the nation's capital introduced a ban on all New South Wales travellers from coronavirus hotspots. Anyone who has been in Greater Sydney, the Northern Beaches, the Central Coast or Wollongong regions are not allowed to enter without a valid permit. But if people need to travel there for extraordinary circumstances, they will have to apply for an exemption at least 3 days before travelling. Police officers were seen at the Federal Highway to patrol the border and to check whether travellers had their exemption passes, with the government announcing that fines will be handed out to anyone who breaches the new rules. Finally tonight, more than 140 years after it was composed, Advance Australia Fair has had an update in a move that PM Scott Morrison says reflects a spirit of unity. But as Leonardo Puglisi explains, despite the lyric change being welcomed by some, many people on both sides of politics are unhappy with the PM's decision.
Good evening. Well, the announcement came just before midnight on New Year's Eve, the Prime Minister revealing that there would be a change to one line in our national anthem in a move he said reflects the spirit of unity. Now, what's the change? Well, it's in the second line of Advance Australia Fair, with the line "For we are young and free" changed to "For we are one and free," to better acknowledge the Indigenous people who have, of course, been here for thousands of years. The piece was first performed in 1878, but only adopted as our national anthem in 1984, replacing "God Save the Queen." But the move has been criticised by people on both sides of politics. Now, some on the left have said that the change is only minor, more should be done to recognise our country's Indigenous heritage, whereas some on the right say the move has let down Conservatives and is another example of cancel culture. Even one LNP senator disagreed with the decision, Matthew Canavan, tweeting that "we are a young nation that doesn't have the same historical hang-ups of older cultures." And of course, you can let us know your thoughts in the comment section below by using hashtag 6NewsAU.
Leonardo Puglisi reporting there, and that is the latest from the 6 Newsroom on this Sunday evening. Don't forget you can follow us on our social media platforms for all of the latest from the Sydney cluster. Just search 6 News AU. For now though, I'm Darby Travers. Thanks for your company. Have a good night.